Good evening and welcome to a Saturday night edition of the Kenny and Renny Show. I'm Ken Weeb of Sportsnet. Sean Reynolds will not be joining us tonight, as I mentioned on last night's show. If you've missed it, Sean had a death in the family and he's out in the Parkland region with the family, so our thoughts and condolences are obviously with him. I will be joined tonight by Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press, and since it's Saturday night, you just never know who might decide to show up and have a little bit of a pop in. But we're here after a convincing comeback by the Winnipeg Jets. 5-2 victory, and obviously things didn't start very well for the Jets tonight, obviously. Draw falling behind 2-0 early, but they were able to rally and find their way back into the contest here. So, we're here as usual to speak to all of you, see what we've got on your mind. Obviously, there was a lot of debate over who might or who should be starting in goal, but looked like Connor Hellebuyck definitely played well in this one. And as Dave Lowry pointed out after the game, both of the goals that did go in were off the stick of a Jets opponent. The second one was off of Andrew Kopp. The first one, I think, also hit a body on the way by. So I know some folks were wondering about that call, but I thought it was a smart call. And this is how I would describe it. And it's nothing to do with Eric Comrie. Obviously, we know that Eric Comrie did an excellent job in his last start against the St. Louis Blues, earning that big decisive victory. But to me, this was like a Game 7 for the Winnipeg Jets. I wouldn't say it was a must-win. You can't have a must-win with 30-plus games left in the season. But obviously, you're wanting to start your starter. I mean, there was a 2-day break between games. Yes, it was back-to-back, but the travel is not overly expansive or extensive when you're looking at a flight from Dallas to Nashville. Yes, there were 35 saves. Yes, the game went to overtime, but it was not a taxing affair overall in the game. So I thought that was a smart call. And yes, I understand when a team falls behind 2-0 early, some folks are quick to point the finger and say, well, what is the head coach doing? All these numbers say this. But I thought that Connor Hellebuyck did an excellent job of settling things down when the Jets were wildly outplayed during a good chunk of that first period of action. In terms of the offense, obviously it was a massive game for Blake Wheeler. We're going to get to him a little bit later on, but 5-point night for Blake Wheeler, which was an incredibly impressive showing. And that's the kind of game that the Jets needed from their captain. Mark Scheifele had a couple of points again. Kyle Connor, 2 assists for Josh Morrissey. Overall, just a pretty solid game by a team that was in dire need of a victory. This was a team that left at least 1 point on the table in the game before, and that was a tough point for them to give up given the circumstances. Now, having said that, they have picked up points in 3 consecutive games. They've looked like a team that is pretty hungry coming out of this break. They talked about the reset and the ability to reset, and they have been able to do that. Now I know how Sean feels when he has to tap dance out of the gate here. So happy to be joined by my good friend Jeff Hamilton. Jeff, thanks for joining me tonight. How are you doing? Looked like you had to clean up my mess here. I was in such a hurry to get on to the show. I forgot to have half of the Dave Lowry commentary in our full transcript there.
Oh, I didn't even see it. I'm not writing, so I was just helping out with the transcript. But I wanted to hear the comments in case you asked me, what did Dave Lowry say or what did I think of his comments. But good to be on. Can't really see it, but I'm repping the Sean's headband thing, and I tend to come on in the perfect times when the hostility seems to be a low one. Thank goodness I decided not to wear the wake up shirt. We would have been caught there with a little matching. Bit of matching things. But hey, maybe this encourages you. Maybe someone says something wild and you have to throw a W at them.
Yeah, there you go. Also, Noah, too, I do appreciate you repping the wake up on the Monday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk. So you already, like you said, you got the rotation going, and you have supported both parties and your friends in this outcome. So
sure, they both arrived. They're both great. They fit great. You guys, your words were true. Everything, the pictures online look good, but getting them, they're cool. They're good.
Yeah, there you go. I did touch on Connor Hellebuck out of the gate, but were you surprised at all with the decision to go back with Connor Hellebuck? I described it as this was a game 7 for the Winnipeg Jets essentially, and there's no debate over who you're going to start in a game 7. You're going to start your workhorse. You're going to start your number 1 guy. I know it's a taxing month, but the Jets came out of the break, and I would argue that because Comrie started that game in St. Louis, it got Connor a little bit of extra rest that he normally might not have had going into tonight's game. But we know it's a busy week next week, 4 games over 6 days. So anyways, just your thoughts on the goaltending decision first and foremost.
I think I'm always surprised when the same goalie plays back-to-back nights, but I'm not surprised when it's Connor Hellebuck that plays back-to-back nights. And certainly to your point, this was a massive game. You didn't start the way you wanted to start this trip, of course. This was supposed to be the tougher game. This was supposed to be the uphill battle of the second of back-to-back. So you're disappointed with the previous night, and you're right, the workload. We've also heard this too from. We've heard this in the past from whenever he's played. They always relate to his workload and how he's feeling. It's interesting because I know when Hellebuck returned to the crease after an Eric Comrie win against St. Louis, a lot of people are kind of itching to see Eric Comrie, but I don't know how you can complain about Hellebuck's performance tonight. Of course, I think it's one of those things where if you win the game, it's a smart move. If you lose the game, it's a stupid one. And I think early on, what an eventful first period. We can get into that in a bit, but
you bet.
I think it was once you saw the 2 goals, it was almost like, yeah, maybe this. I wrote down in my notes. I was like, Hellebuck starting back to back ? And then like we've always said, you can flip the script pretty easily, and sure enough, Connor Hellebuck did just that. Made some key saves when he needed to, and another guy who's flipping the script is Blake Wheeler. So anyway, I'll get off this buffet now. I know what it feels like to go for a long visit, but there's lots to talk about. What a great game for the Jets tonight, for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of like Sean likes to say, the seafood has been if we're in Vegas for the weekend, the seafood has been replenished. The lobster tails just showed up at the table, and you want to make sure you don't take too much from the first station in the buffet because exactly. It's a Saturday night early game. You don't want to take too much from the first station. Let's get into Blake Wheeler right off the bat. I mean, second 5-point game of his career. I know there was some frustration. I mean, I know there was a lot of frustration on a number of levels. Whether it was, it was not a flyby by Blake Wheeler. It was more of a fishing trip. I think he was looking for the poke check, and sometimes when a guy goes by you, I think it looks worse than maybe the play is itself. Mark Scheifele caught gliding a little bit, but wasn't really his man to begin with. I didn't think the sort-out went very well. I thought that maybe because the Jets didn't play it overly well, it prevented Josh Morrissey from being able to be aggressive and stepping up to maybe get in the shot lane to begin with. And all of those things kind of added up to a bit of a head-scratching goal there by Mikael Granlund. But let's go back to Wheeler. I mean, incredible game for him. It's so interesting. I mean, the first Scheifele goal, that doesn't happen without the entry by Blake Wheeler. That was a vintage Wheeler taking it wide on the defenseman. And yes, the pretty part of the play was Ville Heinola and Mark Scheifele playing catch and leading to the one-timer, but that zone entry by Wheeler really got the play started. He was, a lot of primary assists among those 5 points, and you saw some emotion from the captain after scoring as well. And I was curious about what his answer was going to be, and Blake did admit, sometimes he keeps those celebrations a little bit silent. Today he admitted flat out that it's been a challenge to score goals, so when he got one, he sort of had this outpouring of emotion. Just overall, your thoughts on the play of the captain this evening?
Yeah, he was taking a little bit of the Connor Hellebuck therapy, if you will. As we heard him say, what was it after the Minnesota game where they obviously won and he was first star. He talked about enjoying that a little bit longer, right? Or just really feeling those kind of moments. And you could tell, I mean, Blake speaks on behalf of the team, but even his comments post-game, I mean, he talked about the opportunity for the NHL All-Star break to take a look in the mirror, to do some soul searching. You had Dave Lowry say, how some of the adversity was getting to them. And obviously he's referring to himself as well. Dave Lowry saying, he needed that. And he thought that, and we've heard Dave Lowry say this a couple times in the last couple of weeks about Blake, and in that when he got injured that second time, or after the COVID, right, when he hurt himself in the knee, that was his best game, and he was, back on track, and he felt like he was whatever. And then, and then everything kind of it derailed. And he's obviously had the season and some of the negativity that's come with it. And I mean, you're the highest paid player, so it's not like the people want more out of you. And when you say your best players, I mean, whether Blake Wheeler isn't one of this team's best players, but he's up there. And when he's the leader of the team and he's getting paid the most money, he needs to have big nights. And for him to have the 5-point night, I mean, that's you look at it and it distorts the points a little bit, but it's like save some of those for the other games too. But they were crucial and in a crucial game that they needed to come back on. So certainly tons of credit to him. Hopefully he can take a game like this and ride that momentum and get feeling good for future games, because he gets his opportunities. He just needs to finish them, and he has been doing that, and he's justifying his ice time, I think, with games like tonight, I guess.
Yeah, there were a lot of folks in the chat room last night a little bit upset in terms of the Blake being over 20 minutes, but I don't think anyone is upset today. And that was a turn back the clock kind of night for Blake Wheeler. I mean, here, the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, it's not from lack of generating scoring chances. He came into tonight's game, Jeff, with a 2.8 shooting percentage. I mean, 10.6 for his career. So eventually things are going to get sorted out. And yes, I mean, there have been some challenges. Blake has admitted them. COVID obviously hit him pretty hard. But now suddenly Blake Wheeler up to 26 points in 31 games. I mean, it's a lot like last year where, we had I don't like you beaking my captain. And all of a sudden Blake Wheeler is almost at a point per game level. And tonight, so many of those points came in critical times. He had 8 shots on goal today. I thought he was skating really well. The effort level was extremely high. But most importantly, that back to leading by example. And Jeff, let's get right into the power play. There have been tons of times this year where the Jets power play has let them down. I think of the moment where the season kind of turned around. I mean, yes, it's it's an over exaggeration, but the inability to score during that 4-minute double minor to Connor McDavid in that game against the Oilers that they ended up, McDavid has the crazy 1-on-3 goal before that. They don't score on that game on the power play. They lose in overtime or the shootout, and then the season kind of got derailed. I mean, today, after that headshot by Mark Borowiecki, the elbowing major and game misconduct to Yevgeny Svechnikov, the Jets cash in 2 times on that power play. There have been so many times where they had sort of been a little bit tentative. They didn't kind of put the pedal down, if you will, but this time they go out and get 2 goals to kind of take the bull by the horns in a game that they absolutely needed. What stood out to you about the way the Jets power play was able to cash in this evening?
Well, talk about flipping the script. The narrative was the power play was going to be letting them down because that's how they were going to get back into this game, because they were at one point were 1 for 5. Mm-hmm. I mean, right? They finished 3 for 8. Obviously, those 2 massive goals on the 5-minute power play, and when you consider that the last 2 minutes of the 5-minute power play was 4-on-4 after they had a bit of an even up call. And certainly, I think you heard Pierre-Luc Dubois say after the game that they got there on the center dot immediately and said, look, like we 5 minutes, the trap can be that you kind of play with the puck a little bit and try to find that perfect shot. And next thing you know, you've bled 90 seconds, 2 minutes off the clock. Push the play early, see if we can get a few on here, because we have a massive opportunity. This isn't just an opportunity to get up 1 goal. It's an opportunity to get up 2 or maybe even 3 goals. And they were heading on that trend of probably 3 goals if they didn't get the, what I thought was a bit of a, that's a disappointing penalty on Mark Scheifele. I thought Mark Scheifele had a good game, but it's one of those things where, it was the second time he was out there. Like they put that unit back on pretty quickly after they scored that goal. And then, the second unit was on, and then they went right back on. So he was probably tired at that point, but just that's a disappointing one. But I mean, you can't dwell on those. They scored twice and they won the game, obviously. So to me, I think it's the power play certainly clicked. It helped, and you hear Dave Lowry say after the game, it's so true, is that when you never want to see a guy get injured, obviously. You don't never want to see a guy get hurt, but when he does and you get the opportunity, you want to make him pay, and the Jets did. And so you got to feel pretty good about that as far as the special team side.
Yeah, I agree with you. Obviously, that unit cashed in, but I did think it was kind of at an end of a long shift. Mark's got to win that battle in the guy, Ekholm going to the net. You win the puck battle before that, and there's really no play to have to, get the penalty called there. But again, that unit did cash in. They did their job. The puck movement I thought was excellent. So funny. I mean, the Kyle Connor basically had a shooting gallery over on that right wing side, the kind of the reverse line, if you will. Mm-hmm. And then sure enough, the one he gets is kind of one that changes direction and is a change up that kind of sneaks through the wickets. But I thought their puck movement was a lot better. We know that the Jets have been a little bit too static in terms of their positioning on the power play, but there was quite a few more interchanges, and the ability to get shots from the slot with Pierre-Luc Dubois, like Mark Scheifele used to get on the other side. All of those things were important. And again, ultimately they just cashed in on a game, but they really needed it. Jeff, let's get into this a little bit. We stay on the power play. I mean, you got to love the way the Nashville Predators play, but they are so undisciplined. I think to me, time. I mean, it's such a fine line between playing on the edge and playing over it. And there are just so many, whether it's an offensive zone minor or the Borowiecki play. I mean, I know our friend Marshall Patterson is in here. It's a bad to me, it's a bad outcome. I don't think that Borowiecki went into the play thinking I'm going to elbow Svechnikov in the head. He kind of got caught in a vulnerable position, and because he kind of made a little bit of a move, I think it was more reactionary. I don't think he was, obviously it was a headshot and it had to be game misconduct, but I don't think he kind of went in thinking that was going to be the outcome. I mean, what were your thoughts maybe on the hit itself and what happened after the review?
It's clearly the intention isn't there. The intention isn't there to hit him. The intention isn't there to clip him. We all know that there's cameras. So it's not like you can get away with a lot of things. I think it was, as much as it was probably accidental, it was still contact. It's still, there was blood. So that's going to have, I mean, whether you like this or not, any kind of result like that, any blood or a guy down is going to draw the attention. I originally thought maybe it was a high stick, clearly not a high stick. So when a guy's bleeding like that, you usually think he's caught him or clipped him with a stick. So I'm thinking 4 minutes right away. And I was surprised when they announced 5 minutes, like when the ref announced 5 minutes, and then with the review, and then of course the review again, it shows him. I mean, it doesn't take a lot. Clearly there was contact. He was cut. He was rattled. We don't have an update on him. Dave Lowry couldn't offer much after the game. Said he hadn't had a chance to talk to him or whatever, or the doctors or whatnot. So anyway, but it's it's one of those things where you're going to clip them and it's at that shoulder thing, and you can't get a guy's head anymore. So that's kind of the start and finish of the argument. And who knows if he's going to get supplemental discipline. We'll see what happens with all that. But at the same time, I mean, they're trying to get those hits out of the game. So I think for me at the end, when it looks like he's kind of complaining that he didn't do anything, like, or how are you kicking me out? I think that shows maybe a little bit of, his intention. It seemed genuine, but at the same time looks kind of goofy on the ice when the guy's like, what did I do? And they're showing the replays and this guy's leaking on the ground. It's hard to win that argument with the refs. So, but overall, I thought the hit was, I don't call it dirty, kind of just like I know a lot of people might disagree with this, but even Adam Lowry didn't disagree with it when he said that Marcus Foligno probably would want to take that back. He's not that type of player. I get a similar vibe to that play in that it was a bad decision, clearly a evidence there and enough to suggest what he did, but I just don't think the intent was necessarily to clip his face.
Yeah, agreed. And nice one from Al Broderick here. I think maybe Al doesn't even know, but sometimes Kansas actually plays during the intermissions in Nashville. So,
and I was also saying
that was maybe an accidental, but pretty good. If that was intentional, nice job. If it was coincidence, also nice job.
That rink's also a buzzing one. When you say you asked me about the hit.
Yeah,
I think it's just these guys. It's Saturday night in Nashville. It's just a constant party during the game. It's like, I remember I've been there a couple times. I know you've been there plenty of times. It's just one of those things where it's like, it just seems like a party. So all those guys, like they fit, Nashville finishes checks. They're a good team. I mean, they're a hard skating team. They knew the Jets were obviously coming in the, coming into their rink and the end of back-to-backs, and at the same time, wanted to take it to them. And I thought they did take it to them early. And then, I think the frustration from Nashville just didn't seem to subside, and they wanted to continue to play that kind of after the whistle, hockey, and it worked in the Jets' favor. I feel these games are getting heavy, and I'm wondering, is this the way the Jets, like, we've seen fights in the last 3 games?
Yeah.
I think this is by design. I know a lot of it follows, like Dylan's scrap yesterday was based on a hit and whatever. I wrote down fighting here. I'm a guy who enjoys the roughhousing in hockey, and I will preface that by saying I think it's the players that want it. Like, so you and I can debate fighting in the game. You and I can, we can have different opinions. Obviously, no one likes the results of people getting hit in the head and all that stuff. The reason why it's in the game is because the players want it to be. And you hear Blake Wheeler talk about it after the game. You hear Pierre-Luc Dubois not necessarily name Adam Lowry, but talks about the contributions outside of the stat sheet, outside of scoring goals and assists. And I think there was elements there where you didn't really want, like Adam Lowry drops the gloves again to let them know that, let his teammates know, give them the spark that they're not going to get run over on the second of back-to-back nights, and that there's a spark there. So I mean, to me, it's I think it's I think the energy in the rink, you won't be able to feel it over the TV, but I think that energy and that angst was certainly in high drive all game.
Yeah, and Jets fans hate it, but I mean, let's be honest, Jeff. I mean, both times when we've been in the rink together, I mean, it's got the great festive college atmosphere. The "It's all your fault" chant is unbelievable. I mean, I know Jets fans don't like to hear it because that means that they were scored on, but the buzz in the rink is so great. I mean,
college atmosphere is an interesting comparison. It feels more like a rock concert.
Okay, maybe sure.
They got live music going from start to finish, and it's crazy.
For me, the rock concert element is more just Vegas, like that's kind of that club / big event. But to me, I love the atmosphere in there. The fans are fired up. I mean, it's a great hockey market. We've been in there during the playoffs. It's just fantastic, and maybe non-traditional, but these guys love this community loves its hockey, and I love the way that they've gotten into the games. And it's the kind of team that is easy for them to root for because they're a big physical kind of team. They got a lot of skill. I mean, I do think that the response was impressive. I mean, Brandon Dillon just about had another big kind of KO type of hit. The player just got out of the way at the last second, but I mean, yeah, they've been answering the bell physically. I didn't like the Tanner Jeannot hit from behind on Ville Heinola, and actually, the hit that was worse was Benning on Paul Stastny in the corner. It was a clear and blatant example of boarding. I mean, people are arguing, well, Stastny turned. Well, okay, but he still hit him clear on the numbers. And Paul Stastny
does turn pretty quickly.
No, true.
Like that one is a tough one. But yeah, as far as optics wise, were the refs that close and could just fire his hand up as they often do? Yeah, I mean that's
very interesting. Let's. But
I didn't like I thought Ville Heinola one was worse because I felt like Ville.
For sure.
He
didn't turn.
Yeah, he just chased him down and pushed him, face in. So
that was a clear finish on a vulnerable player, and I didn't like that at all. I mean, Tanner Jeannot, I love the way that he plays, but he doesn't need to go after the little guys. He's a guy that goes after the biggest guys on the ice. So I would have liked to have seen him let up on that hit. I didn't like the hit.
And he's a tough guy. I mean, he is
a tough guy for sure.
And he's not just a tough guy either. He's having a good season.
What a year! What a year!
Yeah. So like he's and from what I understand from the broadcasters is absolutely shredded. He said, "quote unquote shredded." So I haven't seen the guy with his shirt off, but those are the scariest guys, the ones that are tough and pure muscle and don't seem to whatever. I've seen Peluso's name tossed up in here, a couple times, and I was a huge proponent of his game, and I know he needed that added element, that scoring element that we would always see in practice. He had some of the silkiest mitts in practice, but when it came to getting it done during game time, wasn't good enough. But just kind of he was a guy who you knew was tough, and so I kind of
nuclear option.
Yeah, he reminded me of him. And then Lowry went him and threw him down. I thought he got the better of a very short fight, but certainly did not look out of place.
And just a quick one before we get back into the game, folks. I know again, obviously, folks are asking about Nikolai Ehlers' updates. When we asked Dave Lowry this week, he said it would, he couldn't give a definitive timeline. He said it could be 2 weeks, could be 4 weeks. So I'm going to split the difference. I don't expect Ehlers back before 3 weeks from when that conversation was held. So whatever, maybe that's March 1st. But folks that were hoping to see him on Monday, you will be disappointed, and we'll see if he gets back before the end of the month. The Jets obviously are missing Nikolai Ehlers, but they've had some guys step up. Last night we talked about Cole Perfetti. A lot of people upset with the demotion in air quotes. I like the fact that he went back to Cole Perfetti. And what did you see from Cole as he bounced back in this game today when he got back with his kind of standard line mates?
Yeah, I'm so impressed with this kid. He's just so poised. He's so, and it's on the ice he's poised. It's off the ice he's poised. Like, this guy is, when you had the similar feelings, and I'm talking about off the ice here, you had those feelings about Josh Morrissey, about how he presented himself, how he, fielded questions, and just the way the kind of person that he came across as a genuine kind of person. And you get those same feelings with Cole Perfetti, that he's got leadership qualities and whatever, but just his IQ, man. Like, he's going to have to adjust. There's going to be growing pains. There's going to be a lot of, getting used to this pace, because that's the biggest thing is you hear from these, you go from junior to pro, even going from the AHL to the NHL. The biggest thing is speed, right? Speed of the game. The game speeds up at every level. And it's one thing to be, fast enough. It's not just speed as in skate speed. It's about, the passes are quicker. You have to think quicker. You have less time. The thing about him is, he's, there have been moments where maybe he doesn't look as good, but there's been way more moments where you go, wow, this guy is, he has the IQ, he has the smarts, he's getting used to it. And, he's going to be a good player. He's going to be able to get, adjust to this. I still say this is going to be a tough stretch for him. This is a lot of heavy games. I think he enjoys playing. He did say he enjoys playing. He acknowledges he's not the biggest guy. It's so funny, man. You see that guy up on in front of a mic, and he looks like a kid. He looks young. Like, sitting beside Paul Stastny the other day, he looked like it was like he was posing for his grade 8 photo. Like, it was, and Paul Stastny obviously being a veteran in this league. So, but just full marks to him and his development and what he's going to be. He's not, he'll continue to grow. He'll continue to play well. I think he's had, we've talked about this at length. He's had such a crazy, opportunity for a young pro and being able to work in the AHL. So he knows what it's like to play a lot of games in few days. And so, but I still think this is going to be a big challenge for him, but I'm looking forward to see how he handles it, because, he's got that bit to him, that IQ that his legs will catch up, everything will catch up. But, the smarts is something that you don't just, you can't just learn. And you can certainly see it with this guy in the way he plays.
Yeah, for sure. And again, yesterday, just over 11 minutes of ice time. Today, he's back at just under 15. And I've said this before. I love everything that I've seen from Cole Perfetti. You talked about his maturity and his ability to. I love the way that great comparison. Josh Morrissey. He's very well spoken. He's insightful, articulate. Genuine love for the game. All of those things. But I think that at 20 years of age, I don't think Cole Perfetti is ready for 20 minutes. I said last night on the show, I said, this to me is like the Nikolai Ehlers sweet spot ice time argument that we've been having for years.
Right.
When he was playing 16 minutes, people wanted him at 22. Well, the physical toll it takes on an undersized forward is intense, and especially during stretches where they're going to be 4 games and 6 nights. But it's the word processor that Cole Perfetti carries around that allows him to not let his, again, foot speed. I'm not saying he's not going to be a fast player, but he's just not a burner like some of the other guys that have come in on the Jets, those first rounders like Ehlers and Kyle Connor and even Jack Roslovic. So
he's not slow.
He's not slow at all. It's just he's just not an above average skater at 20 years old, and he's going
to develop his muscles. He's going to physically. There's guys. Yeah, exactly, 100%.
Yeah, so I like the way that they went back to him. I also like that he promoted Jansen Harkins yesterday. Jansen Harkins was more noticeable in the game and got more of a chance. And I understand some folks wanted Perfetti to move up earlier, and I like the fact that he went to Dave Lowry went to him with Lowry and Kopp in the third period, but I wish he'd done that for a couple more shifts.
Well, don't you love that part too? Like, don't you love the idea that Dave Lowry is not only living up to his words about who's rolling is going to be playing more, he's identifying in game. That tells me someone who's paying attention and understands. There's a luxury to Cole Perfetti playing less minutes in certain stretches if he's not going well for his own confidence, for his own his own longevity. These are tough things for him. So if Jansen Harkins, who was buzzing before he got up that promotion, if he gets the opportunity, if he's going, why wouldn't you put him up there? And it worked out. So but certainly, I think they just understand. I'm not saying the average fan doesn't understand that or we even understand it. I'm saying that the conversations that they have with a guy like Cole Perfetti or, their strategy behind this. This isn't just like, okay, this guy's going to constantly increase minutes. They go to him. They understand what he needs to be successful. They try to find a range for him. But I do like what they've done with Cole Perfetti in that they've surrounded him around players that he can grow his game with, like he can get better with. He's not being logged down to a third line grinder. He's not a fourth line guy getting, nothing for minutes. He's playing, good position. And if he has to go down, I think that's just giving another guy an opportunity, not necessarily that's promoting a guy as much as it is, or maybe less than demoting a guy like Cole Perfetti.
For sure. And I'm going to go. I think to me, Jeff, from the conversations I had with guys like Craig Conray, his old roommate in Calgary, a guy that he played with for a long time. And then when Dave was an assistant coach, Craig was still on the team. I feel like that's the Daryl Sutter influence. One thing Daryl Sutter is really known for is that those in-game adjustments and kind of leaning on guys who are going. That's sort of what I see on that front. Just switching gears to the other 20-year-old. On the team. I don't want to jump all over the place, but I love the identification from Dave Lowry on that 4-on-4 situation to go to Ville Heinola early in the game. I mean, where does this guy excel? In open ice. Where is the most open ice outside of a 3-on-3 overtime? 4-on-4 is built for Ville Heinola. And there too, like for everyone saying that, oh, well, Dave Lowry is just doing things the way that Paul Maurice did them. Well, he does some of the things the same, but no, I mean,
who's saying that?
Yesterday in the chat room, people were going all wild about it there. So to me, I mean, it's great identification by the coach, and lo and behold, obviously it worked out. But I mean, that's where you can use a speed, vision, got involved offensively, but not at a high risk profile. So just maybe your thoughts overall on Ville Heinola. I know yesterday he was at 11 minutes and change. Today, Heinola 13:28, so a little bit more ice time. Leaned on him a little bit more. Maybe just your overall thoughts there, and then we'll stick on the defense core a little bit more into detail.
Well, I think those minutes, even if you look at the marginal difference as far as like what he got versus last game, if you consider how many power plays the Jets had, I think it shows you that he's just adjusting well. He's going to have growing pains. He's going to be, he's going to have certain moments in games that he learns from. But this guy is so smooth, and I was as much impressed as I was surprised to see him on the 4-on-4. But it makes a ton of sense. This is a guy who you get into open ice. This is where he thrives, as you mentioned. This isn't 4-on-4 isn't battled hockey. It's possession hockey. And when a guy like Ville Heinola is on your team, and he I thought up to that moment he proved he was playing well. And I think that's kind of what Dave Lowry is seeing with these young guys is he's identifying if they're rolling, and when they're rolling, he wants to maximize that. And I think that's the opportunity you need to give guys like Ville Heinola, and I think he's rewarded you. I think he shows he's got poise too. I think he's got a bit of a. I think Ville Heinola's got a little bit more of an edge to him than we maybe give him credit. Like I think he's got a bit of fin to him, if you will. Like he's got a bit of nasty to him. Like I know he wants to be up here. There, he doesn't lack confidence, which is massive. I think a lot of people. There's probably been a lot of frustration from him in the past, with how he's been used. But now I think he's more comfortable than he's ever been, and he's ready to prove it. He knows that he knows he needs to play a responsible game. He knows he can't be a liability out there, but he also knows he needs to do something more than just stick in. Right? He knows that he's in a position where he's probably the next guy out. Of that six. So he is fighting for a spot every game. So he needs to have that balance between mistake-free hockey, but also the hockey that you expect from Ville Heinola. So he's not being removed from the lineup, that he's not that next guy out. Maybe a Dylan DeMello, and I'm just throwing out names for the sake of throwing out names here, but I think he needs to make that difference. And I think the beauty about his game is that he has, like Cole Perfetti, but even more so in some ways, that confidence there. Like I think he knows he knows what he's better than the AHL. He knows that he belongs where he is, and there's an effort you can tell on his part to show that part, and he's getting rewarded for it more often than not.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the confidence. And the one thing that I've said earlier, I love the fact that if he's made a mistake or something doesn't go his way, that it doesn't seem to bother. Like he doesn't have a I don't care attitude, but he doesn't let it detract him or get him down. Like, and that's an important quality when you're a young player, especially a creative one, because Ville Heinola has to be aggressive in his defensive reads, and when he's attacking players at the line, he has to be smart. We know all the other stuff he's got figured out. He's one of the best zone exit machines already on the Jets, with his ability to use his agility and lateral ability to get moving sideways to create lanes, whether it's up the wall or up the middle. It's just the other parts of his game that are really rounding into form nicely, and I love the confidence, and I love the fact that he's, with the puck on his stick, he's not panicking and making a high flip. He's looking for a play and making plays, and that cross-ice pass to Scheifele is absolutely exceptional under the circumstances, and that's a really good sign of movement. I mean, I know someone had asked in the chat room, have we seen enough to say Ville's in for sure? Well, no. I mean, he's if you're a rookie, your job is always basically you're always on high alert. So I'm not saying that Logan Stanley goes in immediately after he's healthy. I don't think that's the case at all. But there's competition happening on the back end. Anything else stand out to you about the rest of the way the defense is playing, especially maybe since the pairings have been shifted?
Well, I thought defensive group, I think right now is the way they played the last 3 games, getting 5 out of 6 points against divisional teams that are all above them in the playoff or in the standings. I know Dallas isn't quite there in the playoffs yet, but
they're coming.
They're coming. But this is the lineup that I think they like, I'll be curious about Logan Stanley. He traveled, right? He was never going to play, but he's traveled. He's around the team. They want him to be part of it. He's getting in on, whatever. I don't know if he just goes right back in, especially if they continue to. I don't think you're at a situation where whatever your philosophy is, and I know Paul Maurice had a philosophy of you don't really lose your spot in the lineup due to injury. So when you're ready, you're 100% ready to go into the lineup. You go back to where you are. I don't necessarily think that will be the case. But the Jets are also playing a lot of hockey in a lot of days, so I wouldn't be surprised. Their injuries pop up. Sometimes these things figure themselves out depending on what happens on the injury front. Obviously, COVID is still very much a thing, as the Jets will have to take a bunch. Testing is stopped regularly, but testing hasn't stopped to go into the the states again. So they'll be testing next week before. So there's lots of opportunity. But I've liked enough from this defensive group. I'm with you. I really like the Dillon and Schmidt combo. I think Dillon's played just that gritty hockey. Him and Adam Lowry have been, I think, the 2 guys that have set the tone, physically for sure. But even if you look tonight, I mean, the Jets aren't very good at the back end of road trips. And I know, usually that's over more days than 2, but when you consider they played the night before, I thought they played a great team defensive game today. Like there were times where I thought Nashville took it to them, pinned them in their own end, but the Jets were just plugging up the middle of the ice. I mean, a lot of that stuff was kept to the outside. A lot of it was just, getting in front of pucks, smart sticks, those kind of things. So from that defensive standpoint, and even protecting the lead, they're never really, usually you kind of feel a push from the other team. You kind of feel things flipping. I didn't get that feeling that much today with them. So defensively, particularly in this game, of course, but maybe this week, it's been pretty good. It's been pretty good team defensively. And I think when everyone feels a part of it, I think that's a big part of that success is when everyone feels a part of it, whether it's, high emotion in games. And Dave Lowry said that in his post-game comments, emotion, that this team thrives off emotion. I think guys like Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele need to kind of get pushed into this, a bit of a wake up, if you will. Just with, as physical as these games are. And I think the Jets are going to need to continue to play that beyond just the games that are Central Division, right? Don't go in and play, other divisions games and try to, run and gun. Play that physical, nasty hockey. And that's certainly what we've seen this week. And being able to get 5 out of 6 points playing that style, small sample size for sure, but, enough to suggest to keep doing it for now.
Yeah, that's their pathway, right? I mean, they still need to prove it because they haven't been able to cure that inconsistency bug. But the blueprint and the template, all those things are there. It's just a matter of now not nailing down and drilling down on those details. Man, we're almost 40 minutes through here, time flying. So since you were so kind to wear the T-shirt, Jeff, I'm going to have to pop up the new additions at the Sportsnet store of the Kenny and Renny merchandise. We have the Wake Up coffee mug and the KNR. The KNR T-shirts are now available on the site as well, along with, I don't have one yet. Sean has the only copy, but there is a Wake Up water bottle that is available too. I know, because a lot of people
were story behind this, like,
well, people were beaking me
products or what?
Yeah, they were beaking me because I always have the Dasani waters after the games on the home games.
Right. Yeah.
So
but you never tell them that you bring the same empty Dasani 600 milliliter, 591 milliliter to every game, and so you've been using the same Dasani water bottle for years now.
I'm a big time recycler, that is for sure. But folks who have supported us already, awesome. With the mugs and the water bottles, and I think I don't.
Wait until they find out the Jets don't recycle in the press box.
The Sean's headband is, I shouldn't even be saying this, but classic marketing, I guess, here, right? There will be a Sean's headband available at one point as well here, folks. So
I see some ideas floating in the comments. Maybe we should tease them with one of my branded T-shirts, and that would go really well with work. They'd be like, saw your face or your name on a T-shirt for Sportsnet. It's like, yeah, just things got wild over the weekend.
Incredible. We'll get into the man wearing the T-shirt to the games after this next little stretch here. But David Gustafsson was on the ice with the Jets on this road trip, starting to get closer to full health. I'll be very curious, Jeff. I think there's a good chance.
You call him a Band-Aid? Was that you that was calling
him a Band-Aid? No, that was not me. That was everybody else.
I was to give me a wake up. Did you throw a wake up to that? Did you throw a wake up to that comment? Because I know that fired you up. And I remember I went to the.
It annoys me. I go,
look, I get your point, but kind of you get hurt and then you come back and get hurt for a different injury. That is kind of a Band-Aid. But like, hey, I mean that with all due respect. But yeah, like,
his lifetime games played are at a pretty good spot. So I would think he has to go back to the Manitoba Moose to play some games first. That's just my personal opinion. I think that there would be a temptation to throw him back in, but now he's missed a lot of time lately. And I mean, I know David Lowry likes Dominic Toninato on the penalty kill. I think that Gustafsson would help the Jets during the stretch run and in the second half, but I think he probably needs to get some games with the Moose first before he's back in. But shedding the non-contact is the next step, of course, in that process. But let's transition to.
Look at these, man. These comments here. They're pushing for the I have a bunch of designers here, designer options.
Oh, well, we appreciate all the feedback. That is very important. Speaking of T-shirts, the man wearing the T-shirt because he was stuck in New York with no suit. Scores again today. Angry Pierre-Luc Dubois or the feisty version was also out there again. It looked like he wanted to go after Mark Borowiecki. What were your thoughts on Pierre-Luc Dubois' game as he hits the 20-goal mark with almost, what is it now, 37 games left in the regular season?
You know what I like about his, and I haven't called him any names, but he's such I guess it's late night telling. He's such a prick, and I love it. Like I love that, and it always comes from. It's not cheap shot, right? Like right. Or it is sometimes cheap shot. Sorry, but it's not like, and I said this before. It's not like a Brad Marchand like rat kind of move where it's like almost kind of like super. He usually does it to defend a teammate, and he does it out of raw emotion. So he's. He cares, right? He knows, that he gets fired up pretty easily. So, I think it's great. I mean, I love the photos of him on Instagram, like what he was showing up with, like as if he was in a ski lodge in like the 70s or whatever. He says he's a guy who loves fashion. He's from Quebec somewhere, isn't he? So he's got that I guess to him. But yeah, I mean. I think they were getting serious about him possibly wearing him not wearing a suit to games, and like him commenting after the game about how they'll look into whether it's a fine every game and what that fine would look like. You know what? I used to think it was cool to wear a suit to hockey. Like growing up, I always thought it was like even when I played high school hockey, young, it was nice, it was cool, looking back, it looked so stupid. Like I feel like these, like I wish the NHL dropped all of that stuff. Like if you want to wear a suit because that's what you want to wear, fine. If you whatever, I'd like to see a bit more personality. And I feel like as hockey traditions go, this whole having to wear suits and yada yada, to me it's a little stuffy. And so to kind of, we'll see how long this lasts, but just given the and I also find this to be hilarious. Like, these guys are millionaires, man. Like, what do you mean you could, like, this guy's rolling a t-shirt for 2 days? Like, like, don't you have a fixer in every city to be like, I want a suit, boom, boom, boom. Like, how you get it? I don't know. But
Jeff, I'm with you.
I just don't get it. Like,
he was in New.
Those guys can buy I assume every time I walk by, like, those machines at the airport where there's like, you could buy an iPad on the spot, or you can buy like this on the spot. I honestly think those are for like NHL hockey players. Like, it's just like, damn, I forgot my iPad on on my bed. Boom, like just a tap and then whatever. So, like, I don't know. I find that to be funny, but I like that personality. I like that, I like when players show a little bit more of that. And, hey, maybe this is the start of something very, very bigger. Who knows? Probably not, though.
Yeah. Pierre-Luc Dubois was in New York City. I'm pretty sure. I mean, yes, he was in quarantine for the majority of the first part of that time. Yeah. I'm thinking he might. He may not be able to go off the rack at Banana Republic, but I'm thinking he could have found one. Or, I mean, his dad and mother live in the same town as him. I'm thinking one of them could have got into the house to get a suit onto the plane. But I'm with you. I think this was
an app out there for those people who don't like, I never want to go shopping. I'll pay someone to get something for me. I mean, I don't know, whatever. Yeah,
but he's certainly
t-shirt. It's like, okay,
making the most of it. Yeah, exactly. Well, let's stay on centerman. I mean, obviously, we know Mark Scheifele. The microscope has been out leading into the All-Star break and coming out. Third game in a row that he's had a goal. What did he have finished with tonight? He finished with
3 points.
One and 2 for 3.
Yep.
Overall, what stood out?
Great assist too. Sorry, you're about to ask.
Yeah. What do you think about the way that he has responded to the? I don't even want to say necessarily criticism, but in terms of the,
you don't want to say criticism.
Well, there's certainly criticism from the fan base.
Hardcore. You've been the topic of criticism. He's the only guy who is really being asked, where are you? And so, he acknowledged that he needed to come back and have a big second half. And what does a big second half look like for number 55? Kind of like that one-timer on the 4-on-4. You know what I mean? Like that. Yeah. That is what it looks like. And to me, and you've said this. Geez, you said this more than anybody. That look, like, he's not a defensive guru. He's going to have these moments in games where he's going to look foolish, and you want him to minimize those things defensively, but you also want it to overshadow by some of the the things that we're used to seeing from him. And that's, like I said, that one-timer on the 4-on-4, that feed to Blake Wheeler on that for a tap-in. I mean, Credit to Blake for getting a stick on it, but that's what he did. He got a stick on it. Whereas, you have Scheifele, delivering that pass. So certainly, this is what you need from him. You need him to be coming up big. You need him to coming up. That's a clutch goal, the 4-on-4 one too, and you look at what he's done. You look at the tying goal in yesterday's game. You look at he had the game winner in mini. This is a good week for Mark Scheifele. What Mark Scheifele's had to do is he's had to put good days together. Now he's put a good week together. Let's see him put a couple weeks together, and then a month, and then the second half of the season. He needs to be feeling good again, and he's the kind of guy who that it's weighing on him. He's a point guy. He studies film and all these things, and he's still that hockey nerd that he's been referred to so often, that he wants to see that stuff get pay off, and it pays off with the kind of plays he made tonight and has made this week. And that's just the way these guys are built. They need confidence. And I think if you're looking at this, you need Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele to be confident. And I think you're going to, a big game from 26 tonight and a strong week for the most part. Obviously there's moments defensively and you can stick them out, and some are glaring on Mark Scheifele, but at least he's getting that touchback, because this team needs to score big goals. They have an offensively gifted team, and they need 55 to be that player we've seen this last week for this last stretch here.
Yeah, it's been impressive, and he needed it. I think too. I mean, Jeff, I'm not sure what maybe stood out to you in that comment with Mark, or when Mark met the press the day before the game or the day of the game. He
Mm-hmm.
did sound refreshed, right? When it came, like, this was a guy who looked like he needed. I said it to Hustler going into the break. He looked and sounded like a guy that needed a vacation when he came back. One thing I'll
What
share
do you think it
quickly.
was? What did you think it was? Like, what did you think was? I mean, obviously it was more than one thing, but if you
Yeah,
had to say one thing that was, nagging this team and putting them into, you're around the team, I'm around the team, on the road, you see these guys often. What would you say was the biggest thing weighing them down? Because I have a feeling I could name one
you have a theory. Good.
thing.
To me, I think for Mark specifically, I think that the Olympic stuff kind of immersed him. His thoughts. I
Interesting.
mean, he often said that it's in the back burner, but to me, this is a guy who he got a taste at the World Cup, obviously, with Team North America. He has represented his country at the World Junior and the World Championship, but this is a guy who wants to play in the Olympics. I think he put a lot of pressure on himself. I think there was some emotional toll from the offseason with the suspension that was still because the suspension. I mean, to me, Jeff, if he serves the last game of his suspension against Montreal and starts the season fresh, then it's no problem. I mean, you put that chapter behind you in your life and you move
Yeah,
on.
that carried with you all off season too. Like,
And
and yeah.
especially the way he talked about how his family was targeted. I think that we know how important Mark's family is to him. I mean, he did the great expansive feature on him and speaking with a lot of those family members.
Mm-hmm.
That would have hurt Mark at his core. I think a lot of people were viewing him differently as a player. Some people were questioning the accountability on the hit. I think that bothered him a lot. And Mark's a guy who gets immersed in the game and sometimes can't get away from it. I can remember one year coming out of the Christmas break, the Jets played in Chicago, and my flight ran through Toronto. And just by happenstance, Mark Scheifele's on the last flight from Toronto to Chicago. I see him on the walk to the terminal. I mean, these guys aren't flying commercial very often, but this was one of those times that they were where they're meeting the team. There's no practice on Boxing Day. And I was talking to Mark and I was asking him about his break, and he said it was great. But then he almost immediately he said, well, I spent a lot of time with Adam Oates looking at video. And like, to me, it looks like this time he actually took the 5 days away from the rink and kind of just blocked out that part of the world, the outside noise, as people like to describe it, and kind of came back and remembered that, oh yeah, I love hockey. This is a guy who loves the game, and he's playing with a little bit more of that love and passion coming out of the gate. That's my theory on Mark, and I think, I mean, he has some things he still needs to clean up on, but I think that there's shared responsibility on that first goal, as I mentioned. And same thing last night. I think that the pinch by Pionk kind of kickstarted that whole thing. Mark he was gliding, but he didn't think he was going to have to be chasing anyone. He thought a play was going to be made in the neutral zone. And then, like I said, I'm not blaming Ville Heinola because it was a tough play, but he didn't take the puck carrier, the shooter, or the pass. He didn't take away the passing lane. So, I mean, he kind of got stuck in the middle. And I think that when you are one of the best players, and as I think Dave Lowry doubling down and saying Mark needs to be our best player, that's smart coaching. You have to motivate your best players sometimes and show some faith in them, even at a time when you know you want more from them. So I thought that reinforcement was important as well. But it just seems like because Mark Scheifele ends up in the frame lately, everyone thinks that every goal is immediately his fault. At least that's what it seems like the fan base is going. But I mean, today he had a massive game, another kind of big time game in a game. We talked about it so often last year, Jeff, in those games against McDavid and against Matthews. When is Mark Scheifele going to take over a game? Well, tonight was one of those days where he basically willed the Jets back into the game. It was 2-0 and the game was teetering. Like, the shots were like 12-1, and that's one goal away from it absolutely falling off the rails, and he helped get them back into it. So anyways, back to your theory. Sorry about that. That's
Well,
my
yeah,
trip to the
no,
buffet.
yeah, no, absolutely, and for Mark too, like you mentioned the profile I wrote on him years ago. The biggest takeaway was he was like the story was pretty much based on him being the world's worst loser,
Right.
and he doesn't. We all have those. We all played with those guys, right? Where they couldn't get past the loss, or the losses would compound, and they wouldn't talk after games, and they'd be quiet, and he's kind of one of those guys. He's hated losing his entire life, and so I can certainly see how how things would win. My question to you is for the whole team, but I certainly
No, fair. Yeah.
appreciate the psychoanalysis on Mark Scheifele. I thought that was very good.
Very deep. I've given it a lot of thought.
Yeah. That sounds like, yeah, absolutely, yeah, no, for sure. It sounds like this needs a hug, but I think that living in Canada under the COVID restrictions and testing in particular was a massive issue for this team. Like
Yeah.
the lack of hanging out with each other, the lack of a social life, the lack of probably wives getting together. I mean, I'm sure they, do their thing too, but just the whole being stuck at home, and the anxiety that goes into testing every day and wondering if you're getting this. I think guys were really snarly. Guys were, I'm not trying to make this a COVID thing or whatever. I just think that really weighed on them. I think they just weren't having any fun. And over this opportunity, some guys came back and got COVID. So they were obviously, most likely, finding some fun out there and doing some things. And I think that's what they really needed was a break and a relaxation from that. And now that they're not getting tested, every day, I think sets them up nicely as far as, the mental side of the game and whatever. And I also think they're having fun because I think they feel like they're fighting now. I really do. I do really think, you would have hoped that this team would have figured it out and knew the, danger they were in standings wise over the last 2-3 weeks and gotten better results or month or 6 weeks, whatever. But now I think it's do or die. And I think it's turned this team into a scrappy team, a fighting team. And I'm interested to see how long they can keep this up because they have a hole. They're going to be in a hole for a while. And so, they need to be clawing these wins out and couple the break with some of the nastiness this week, and I think they're they maybe just maybe are possibly turning an edge here, and we can see some more passionate hockey, if you will.
Yeah, these next. I mean, it's interesting. You touched on the 5 out of 6 points for the Jets against quality opponents and high end opponents that they're chasing. We've talked about this before about how the Jets handle success, Jeff. I mean, they're welcoming the Chicago Blackhawks on Monday. We know that the return match with the Minnesota Wild is going to be feisty and fired up and all of those things. How does this team respond on Monday night against the Chicago Blackhawks? Blackhawks been playing better, all of those things. Yes, Marc-Andre Fleury between the pipes. He's a much wanted player at the deadline as a rental for the contenders. But how are the Jets going to play against a team that they'll have to get up themselves for? These other games were easy to get up for because of the nature of the games. Chicago probably wants to play a more wide open style. The last time they rolled through town, they basically played the way that got their coach fired. I mean, to me, I'm very curious to see how this group responds because let's be honest. I mean, last night and tonight, it was one of those things where you wouldn't have been surprised if the Jets kind of got rolled in this game in the back-to-back. Instead, they changed the narrative, but now can they sustain it, especially against a team that is not as easy to get up for, in quotation marks again, because I know and the Jets have to get up for all these games. They respect their opponent, but can you sustain it against a team? Sometimes you had to play up to the level of Dallas maybe, or up to the level of Nashville. Now you have to dictate the play to the Chicago Blackhawks. How are they going to handle this little bit of success, and how do you expect them to respond on Monday night?
So I would buy that more if they were, like the Florida Panthers, like if they were and Chicago was coming.
Oh, you're right.
It was like, we can't, this, we can't. I'm not saying guys view it as point night. We can't view these guys as we got to have respect for all our opponents, yada yada. Mm-hmm. The Jets should not have to be asking themselves to get up for anybody in this day. Like right now, they need to be. If you have a hard time getting motivated now, this team's done. So, but to your point, I'm not saying that. I'm
not saying that they should have a problem. No, I'm just saying that they have had a problem.
Well, but regardless of how we feel they're gonna, whether they show up, they better show up. I mean, that the reality is this is this. There's no easy nights in the NHL. You have to have respect for all your opponents. Blah blah blah. But if you're losing to the Chicago Blackhawks, you're in big trouble. They're not as good as you, and so this is this is where you need to. I agree with you in the sense that. Maybe they've had to play up to Nashville, like they matched their intensity tonight and played a disciplined game and clearly came out with the 2 points. Similar to in the Dallas game, in that they had to match that intensity. But when you're at home and you're another divisional game, regardless of where they are, you need those points. And to me, I think this one's from what we'll see for what we think we might see, we better see a Jets team that's motivated, because those are 2 points that at the end of the game, I don't know what you can say afterwards. If you don't get both of those points, that's just a massive disappointment.
No, and the only reason why I say it is because of what we saw against the Philadelphia Flyers. I'm not going out on a limb and saying like this is like when they were winning the division and losing games against teams below the line. I mean, we have recent examples where they didn't play at a high enough level against a team that's below them in the standings. We've talked, this whole stretch here against central opponents or against teams that they're chasing. Now they're playing a team that's chasing them, so the hunter becomes the hunted. It's always interesting to see how groups respond. And let's quickly go to the goaltending. I mean, some folks thought, after a back-to-back, maybe you go to Comrie on Monday. To me, I think Comrie plays Thursday. I think that Hellebuyck rides on Monday and Wednesday, and you can play Eric Comrie on Thursday against the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, I think that's the play too. I can't see Connor Hellebuyck playing back-to-back games and then not playing, getting a couple of days off here or till Monday rather. Sorry, and then he's in, right? I think he goes right back in there. You need these points, and you let him ride what he's playing some pretty good hockey. Continue that, and then I think you put Comrie in for against the Kraken. I think you need to get Comrie into more games. I'd be curious. I'd be curious the whole process they have. I wonder what those conversations are like with Connor Hellebuyck, because I've always been, it's funny because every time I write that he's arguably the best goalie in the world, I get so many emails from people being like, "Who's paying you to say that? What who's whatever." And I know Connor Hellebuyck hasn't been the Connor Hellebuyck, the Vezina, worthy Connor Hellebuyck that we've seen. I certainly think he hasn't been as bad as people suggest this year. And if you look at particularly the early parts of the season, and if this team doesn't make the playoffs, and you go back and depending on how many points they're out by, you can look back at Connor Hellebuyck on a handful of games and go, they didn't win when he played well and whatever. So, but at the same time, you look at what Comrie was able to do, the poise and the confidence he had in St. Louis, and you wonder, okay, well, maybe Connor Hellebuyck could use a break. Maybe you aren't using his, maybe you shouldn't be going to his word as much as maybe giving him a break. Because if the Jets are going to, go deep in the playoffs, you don't want to see him getting tired at the end of the season and into the playoffs just because you're desperate for points.
I'm going to take the over on this, but only slightly. How about yourself?
So 37
so
games?
I set the over-under for Hellebuyck in the last 40 games at 32.5. I'd said over, but just over. So here, if he says more than 5, I'll say he gets 6 or higher for me. What about for you? There's 37 left.
Well, just given the schedule, you'd think that he, in other circumstances, you can justify playing, loading the games on Connor Hellebuyck. Because if you look at the actual number of games, if you just look strictly at the numbers, that sounds more than reasonable, right? That heavy workload. But given that workload is going to be within, a magnified, condensed season with more games than they would have, imagined there. I imagine they would have had the Olympic break, right? He would have been playing hockey still, so there still would have been, a workload for him. But I wonder how that would have changed. Like, obviously, it doesn't matter anymore. But at this point, I think you got to get Comrie in, but I also think Comrie needs to earn the crease every time he gets in, and that's just the reality of being a backup goalie. But if he comes in, you want to set up Eric Comrie to succeed, because you want him confident too that when he does go in, But I think the reality is going to be he's going to have to prove every single time, like every backup goalie, that he's worthy to get in, because they're going to ride Connor Hellebuyck because it's all about making the playoffs right now. And my theory of wanting to maybe have a bit of load management so he has some more energy in the playoffs is really pointless if they don't make the playoffs. So I see a heavy load on him, but I'm with you. I think very, very slightly over that, but not much more.
Same. So Comrie right now 7 starts, 8 appearances. I would have thought going into the year Hellebuyck around 62-ish, especially if he was going to play in the Olympics, where those are taxing games. But there too, then you start the backup coming out of the Olympic break and things of that nature. I agree with you. One more quick thing on Hellebuyck before we turn it over. I mean, seeing the way... So Mike McIntyre was asking about the starting assignment today. To me, Dave Lowry was shaking his head before the question was over. My interpretation, Jeff, was that he thought Mike was asking him if he considered pulling him at 2-0. Whereas the question was actually about who he thought was going to start. What was your interpretation on that? And maybe am I reading too much into it?
Interesting you say that. That didn't cross my mind when I was watching, because I felt like I knew where Mike was going with the
Sure.
question. I didn't think that, and whether, Dave Lowry would have reacted to thinking, were you ready to pull him? I think that would have been an interesting question, because, some of those goals, like particularly the second goal, to me was kind of stoppable, like
it did ride up that cop's stick, though. I think it changed the trajectory. I mean, it did come out from far enough that you'd like that save.
Well, that's what I mean, like, and we've seen, like, yes, it was redirected, but I think from where the distance was. Anyway, but to your question, who knows what he was thinking? But I felt like that's where Mike was going with it, and I think he would have had the same answer regardless.
Fair,
of the question was. I think, because I think the reason why I think it's your thought is interesting, because I think that Dave Lowry would have that exact same response to to either of those. So,
and he's already had it once this year, right? I mean, he was asked about it by Mike one other time at one of the home games where the Jets kind of responded there.
Well, and I thought it was interesting too, because even in Mike's question, like, the statistics show that goalies don't play well in back-to-back games. You know what I mean? So it's like there's enough of the analytics there to suggest this isn't the right move. But it's also I think those are all dependent on who the goalies are, and who, and we know that Connor Hellebuyck can take on wants to take on a massive load. This is how he gets comfortable, and let's not pretend that Wade Flaherty doesn't have say in this. He that's his job, is to know the goalies, to know, how they're doing, to trust them, and to make sure that they're not, you kind of have to have a leash on them a little bit here. But at the same time, I mean, to the expression Dave Lowry made, I thought it was for them, I'm not surprised at all. And clearly from that response, if he did think it that way, it was a no-brainer that he was going back to Connor Hellebuyck.
Okay, last anything else to get off your chest? I think we've gone over an hour.
I'm looking at
whatever your notes
list.
say. Did I miss anything? I'm not as good a host as an analyst as you know, but I'm just doing my best to get by here.
Yeah, you're doing a terrific job, Kenny. I think I have everything in here. All my
covered.
I don't know. Does anyone else have a question here? They think, Super Bowl predictions.
Oh yeah, sorry. Let's do that before we left. I'm gonna say, I personally would like to see the Bengals win.
Oh,
I just feel like they're ahead. Like, I think that they're in for a heartbreak. I think they've done. I love the way that Joe Burrow plays. To me, my big issue, I mean, Joe Mixon, yes, I understand he's an important part of their team. I don't think they run the ball well enough. And I also think that, Jalen Ramsey is going to be able to blank. I mean, I love the way that Jamar Chase has played, but I mean, if he goes one-on-one with anyone else except for Jalen Ramsey, I could see him going off, and maybe he has three touchdowns, and maybe they find a way to win. But they don't. They need like a battering ram type of running back, and I don't think that they have that player. I think if their offensive line needs to give Joe Burrow time, because he has been under duress. Even in the game, one game I think he got sacked 9 times and they still won.
Yeah, they still won. First time ever that team's got sacked that many times and won.
Crazy. So, and to me, on the flip side, I think the Bengals' only chance of winning, outside of Joe Burrow being out of his mind, is to exert pressure on Matthew Stafford and force him into a Detroit Lions Matthew Stafford type of 2 or 3 turnovers, maybe a pick 6 or a fumble in there. But to me, the Rams are so deep. They went out and got Von Miller. They went out and got OBJ. I love Cooper Kupp. I love that somebody had the stones to vote for him as the MVP, because it doesn't have to automatically be a quarterback in that position. Nothing against the season Aaron Rodgers had, but I just think that Aaron Donald is so good defensively. I can't see how he doesn't disrupt the timing of Burrow in the game. I think it's a tight game, but I'm going to choose the Rams, and I'd have no problem with them winning. But I also would love to see the Bengals are the great underdog story.
I want to make it about gambling, but I wonder what the spread is. Yeah, so I'm with you in the sense I want the Bengals to win. I think it'd be a great story. I just really want to see a ton more Joe Burrow memes that come out,
and the shades too. Speaking of fashion and PLD,
fun.
Right?
yeah, exactly. Like those have been fun to see. The way I see it, I think the Rams win. My guess in all this is that the Rams kind of build up a fair amount of a fair lead, and I think we see some Joe Burrow magic.
Like against the Chiefs, right? Everyone thought the Chiefs were running away
right,
with it, right?
where it becomes desperate football, right? And
Right.
I think we see them maybe claw their way back, but I'm with you. I think it's a bit of a heartbreak at the end where you just kind of fall short. But I hope we're dead wrong. And the next time we're on the show, we can give them a call.
Check the receipts,
and
yeah.
whatever. Yeah, Bengals blow them away. It's just like me suggesting a comeback that just falls short would be pretty stupid. But I can't help. I definitely have no rooting interest. My team. I don't really have teams, but for some reason I follow the Jets. So I the New York Jets. And so anyway,
is that a Gary V influence, or how did you start to follow the Jets, the New York Jets? Sorry, we're getting off topic.
Reading the New York Times. Because
Beautiful.
I just so like it was that and just the Ryan days and just kind of the disaster that they've been and the Sanchez. I just like reading about disastrous teams. I like that that harm. So but yeah, that's what I'm most comfortable with. But yeah, no, but you know what? This is going to be an exciting one. It's one of those for me that it's a win-win. For whoever wins, it's going to be a good story. So
totally.
And a great game that doesn't have a Mahomes in it.
And
Sorry, bud.
and a fabulous halftime show. What a weekend for music fans. Pierre-Luc Dubois referencing Motley Crue in the dirt, and Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Eminem, Mary J. Blige should be tremendous.
Holy smokes, absolutely! Like I was getting they have the trailer. Have you seen the trailer on YouTube? Awesome, man. I mean, I feel like I got old overnight. I'm 36. Turned 36 not long ago, and I just feel like this is, I saw some memes too. Like that halftime show is going to be just bonkers.
Awesome. And again, it's so interesting. Again, totally off topic, but this I think is why folks can relate. We watched one of the Janet Jackson show on Netflix recently, and all the uproar about what happened at the halftime show.
Oh man!
How are they going to get through any of the songs without having censoring things happening tomorrow? That's what I'd like to know.
You don't want to be typing the transcript out in some of those songs, but they'll find ways. I think they're pretty good at edits and the self-edit stuff. So who knows? Maybe they'll have someone. Yeah, you'll need a creative writer just to
lyrical
make sure things are up to where we are in 2022. To say the least, for sure. But all-star studded lineup for sure.
Yeah, should be tremendous. Hammy, thanks for joining us. This was a lot of fun. We always enjoy sharing the airwaves. And folks, another awesome job by the chat room firing things up for an hour and 12 minutes and counting. I'm going to get to my writing here. Hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. If you didn't check it out, we had Christina Rutherford and Arash Madani on our long-form show on Thursday. It was fantastic. And one last push, if you're looking for, it's not Christmas time, but if you're a little late on Valentine's Day, better late than never. Always an opportunity to check out the KNR merch at the Sportsnet store there. So thanks again, everyone. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will talk to you after the game on Monday. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.